Highgate Vampire. Yep.
Right. Going live, and we're live now. Welcome to Fortean Words. We've got the fantastic Zero back again to talk about the Highgate Vampire.
Oh, you cut out.
I probably will cut out a bit for you because my internet isn't the best.
All right. Yeah, well, the nights are drawing in, getting all dark and scary. So yeah, what better episode to do than the Highgate? Yeah, well, the nights are drawing in, getting all.
Yeah. So where do you want to start with the Highgate Vampire? Because you are more of an expert than me. I'll put it that way.
Sort of an expert. Yeah, I've been into it for years because I find this stuff fascinating.
Well, my first brush with the Highgate Vampire was. Do you remember? I don't know if you're down our way, but do you remember a program called Central Weekend?
Oh yeah, what with when he disappeared at the end?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that on YouTube. Yeah.
I watched that as a kid live, so I've always been kind of fascinated. But there's not a great deal about unless you read the book, is there?
Yeah, I got into it through the Jenny Gray's Gothic magazine, Oldolfo. That was the first time I heard about it, and I just thought, well, this is nuts. This is like vampires walking around in North London, you know.
Actual Van Helsing, and he's a bishop too.
Staking him or hunting him, staking him, cutting his head off with a gravedigger's shovel, and then burning the remains.
Because he's got pictures of the body decomposing, isn't he?
Well, he's got a picture, yeah, but some people say that was from like some film of Dorian Gray or something.
Oh, really? Is that what they reckon it is?
But well, before we get to the best one, the Highgate Vampire.
Yeah,
there've also been previous ones in Scotland, of all places. In 1954, there was the Gorbals Vampire in Glasgow's southern necropolis. And the Gorbals Vampire was a 7-foot-tall, iron-teethed creature that allegedly snatched and devoured 2 local boys.
Oh, blimey!
Which understandably sparked a mass vampire hunt for the fiend, with like hundreds of children scrabbling around the graveyard, like some of them are armed with knives and sharpened stakes. And
mind you, being in Scotland, it probably all started with a bottle of Bucky, didn't it, Zero?
Well, that was 1954, so that's pretty wild for 1954. I don't know. I suppose rock and roll was on the go then, wasn't it? Was that a bit?
Just a few years before. I think Cliff was just pulling his drain pipes on for the first time in '54, wasn't he?
God, I don't want to change the subject. I was thinking about Cliff Richard the other day. Yeah, okay. I think he's a fine, upstanding entertainer, really.
Just like all
I like
of them.
the way he had that little sort of like lisp, didn't he? He was like the British Elvis, weren't he?
I think that's what he was supposed to be, didn't he? My favourite. Oh, we're going way off topic now. But my favourite Cliff Richard story was he used to sing a song called Honky Tonk Angel?
I don't know.
And then he found out what honky tonk meant, so he stopped singing it.
Cliff Richard used to live on Millionaires Row near Llandudno, and apparently he's got this like weird kind of elevator in his mansion that sort of goes down from his mansion to the beach. But there's a rumour that there's like a sub level to it, like a sub basement you can go down. But yeah. Anyway, back to vampires.
Well, I don't know. Cliff might be a vampire. He's lived an awfully long time, hasn't he?
Well, they're all a bit weird, aren't they? You know, in 1998, Greyfriars Cemetery in Edinburgh was a scene of another vampire manifestation, or contagion, as Sean Manchester calls it. I prefer contagion.
Bishop, you've got to use his proper title.
His Excellency.
His Excellency.
The bloody Mackenzie vampire. He was like mooching around in the Greyfriars Cemetery in 1998 when all sorts of weird shit was happening, like cold spots, strange smells, banging noises, and people becoming overcome by nausea. and even like cut and bruised by an invisible fiend.
So do these things tend to happen in like huge cemeteries then? Because I need to get some facts up about Highgate, because Highgate's absolutely massive, isn't it?
Yeah. I've never been there, yeah, but I'd love to have gone there when it was all overgrown. It's all been sort of tied up a bit now. But...
Yeah, you can go and see, what's his name? Marx's grave, the communist grave that you have to go and pay to go and see.
Someone tried to blow it up, didn't they, a few years ago?
Did they?
Successfully, yeah. I think they chipped a bit of his forehead off.
Oh, dear. So, are we going to get back to vampires now?
Greyfriars Cemetery, yeah, like over about a 3-year period. Like,
sorry, Highgate is 15 hectares, that's 37 acres.
Fucking hell, yeah.
They estimate 170,000 interments in there.
Yeah, no wonder it's bloody haunted with all them like those stiffs in there.
All sorts going on in there, I should imagine. So anyway, you're saying about the Greyfriars.
Greyfriars near Edinburgh, in Edinburgh. Like, over the space of 3 years, more than 100 people were knocked unconscious, apparently, by this like invisible force or whatever. And homes next to the graveyard started having all poltergeist stuff happening, like objects moving around and unidentified laughter. That sounds incredible creepy, like unidentified laughter.
Yeah, I mean, have you ever heard about like screaming skulls? You know, where
the screaming skulls.
Yeah, where like a house has a skull or something, then some idiot throws it down the well, and they just have screaming forever, don't they?
That's freaky stuff.
Yeah.
Apparently, I never heard of this Greyfriars one, but apparently there was hundreds of witnesses to all this stuff.
So why did they call it a vampire? Because it does seem to be more like a poltergeist.
I suppose that's like the media, isn't it? They like a sort of. I suppose it's interchangeable.
Because it's hanging around a graveyard, then they call it a vampire, then, don't they?
I suppose vampires can smash crockery and stuff. I don't know. I suppose it's interchangeable, really. I don't know. But...
I suppose it depends which myth you go by, doesn't it?
But what a strange thing! Like we're not supposed to believe in all this stuff, are we? But here we are with like hundreds of witnesses to all this stuff. I mean, given some of them might have been sort of crazy and making it up, but
well, it was probably swamp gas over Venus with a mass panic. Geese, ball lightning.
Yeah, ball lightning.
You know, ball lightning that everybody's seen. So common, it's just everywhere.
Yeah, right. But after this, I don't know what happened. I don't know if it's still going on, but a few years later, in 2004, a group of teenagers, led by 17-year-old Sonny Devlin, which is an interesting name, Mr. Devil Devlin, they broke into the Mackenzie Mausoleum where the vampire supposedly lurks, cut the head off a corpse, and then used it like a hand puppet.
Oh, nice.
So that's kind of like as if maybe like the area just attracts people and sort of inspires them to do stuff like that, as sort of strange places do. But very well, that's all in Scotland anyway. But I wonder if that's still going on. But
you never know. What was that? What did you say it was called? I'll have a look, see if there's
Greyfriars Cemetery in Edinburgh. Bloody Mackenzie, that was the name of it. He was the King's advocate for Charles II. Because I don't know about vampires, you know. It's because personally, I'm sort of game to believe anything really, like vampires, werewolves. Like, it's easy to dismiss these things when we're sitting in our centrally heated homes, but like if you're out in the sort of woods and that, it's an altogether different.
I think if someone dumped you right in the middle of 30 odd acres of cemetery in the middle of the night, I'm sure you'd be up for believing anything, wouldn't you?
I did do that once. I sort of dared myself to go to this local cemetery, and the fear goes right up. Yeah, it's like anything you see is like a bloody ghost or like a zombie or something. Yeah, fascinating stuff. Fear, isn't it? Really gets the sort of senses like keen, doesn't it?
Yeah, I've been on a couple of ghost hunts, but I think they were kind of like a bit too organised. There was too many people there. I always wonder whether like too many people kind of disperses them.
Yeah. I suppose the best thing's just to come across one naturally, really. Sort of.
Yeah. So I'm still yet to do that. Have you seen one?
I've seen a few. Yeah, I had one walk through me once. That was really odd.
Oh, how did that feel?
I was sort of staying in this. Well, not staying. I was visiting this sort of country. What they call, these National Trust country things. And
yeah.
I was just walking around. I always feel odd in these places anyway, because I'm sure like all these places are like psychically active. And I just felt really odd, and I looked up at the window. I looked up at this window, and suddenly this sort of thing just rushed from the window and just went straight through me. I didn't see what it was or anything, but it was just like a whoosh, and then I just felt this cold thing go through me.
So right, back on track yet again.
The vampires, yeah.
Yeah, where did you want to start? Do you want to start with Sean Manchester, or do you want to start with the cemetery, or do you want to start with the vampire, or?
Well, maybe vampires in general. Like there's the old English tradition of the revenant, isn't there? Like the buried corpse that sort of rises from the grave and then starts hassling all the villagers.
Is that usually is a revenant something with unfinished business then, is it?
I don't know. It's a bit vampirish. I think they sort of physically attacked people. I suppose it might have been just people who were prematurely buried. But I suppose they'd be understandably miffed, wouldn't they?
Yeah, but that's the thing though. They go, well, no, it's just premature burial. Like they were just like burying anybody for any reason. It's some of this stuff. It just doesn't quite add up, does it?
It's that historian Walter
the so-called rational explanation.
Yeah.
Well, there's also I can't remember where it's from, this myth, but they've another myth is that if you go to sleep without having a proper drink, or hungry, your spirit will raise and become a vampire or something like that.
Well, if you die in your sleep without eating?
No. If you're not like alive, but you just go to bed needing a drink, that your like spirit will come out your body and go and look for something to drink.
That's weird, yeah. Because I'm really into Montague Summers. That crazy kind of. He was sort of reverend. He's a bit. I think Sean Manchester sort of models himself a bit.
Sean Manchester's inspiration, isn't he?
But he wrote two like really good books, Montague Summers, The Vampire is Kith and Kin and The Vampire in Europe, like in the late 1920s.
Yeah, because do we really have a tradition for vampires? Because most of the stuff I've read is kind of Eastern European, isn't it?
According to Montague Summers, yeah, there's been he lists loads of sightings in his books. Yeah, a lot of it's European, but there were English ones. Yeah.
Yeah. But it seemed to be kind of like Romania in that way, didn't it? It was like where they seem to have most of it. Because then,
still believe
like France, yeah. Like France, and a bit closer, it tends to be like your lycanthropes, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's a good old subject. Yeah, the old lycanthropes. Yeah. Back to Highgate.
Back to Highgate. Well, it's our first episode together. I think we're just like teasing up some subjects.
Well, since Victorian times, at least, there's been unconfirmed sightings of this tall, dark figure in Highgate Cemetery in London. And if people don't know Highgate is like whatever they call a district in North London, but it's kind of apart from London. It's sort of on a hill. It's very hilly, and it's sort of like it's almost like a different, not country, but it's just different. It's not like the rest of London. It's sort of more enclosed. And
well, it says here that I'm just going by the Wikipedia here, but the cemetery comprises of two sites on either of Swains Lane in Highgate N6, next to Waterloo Park. The main gate is located on Swains Lane, just north of Oakshott Avenue. There's also another disused gate on Chester Road. The cemetery is in the London boroughs of Camden, Haringey and Islington. That's how big it is. The nearest transport link is Transport for London bus C11 bus Brookfield Park, or Stop the Archway tube station.
Yeah, the east. There's two sides. Yeah, the east side is where Karl Marx and all those people are buried, but the north side's where the vampire's seen. He's usually seen just inside the north gate of the cemetery that opens onto Swains Lane.
Oh, Jeremy Beadle's in there.
Jeremy Beadle.
Maybe it's Jeremy Beadle making jokes in the afterlife.
That's possible. Yeah.
He just whips off the old top hat and goes, "Hey, got ya!"
Wiggles his funny finger at him.
Triggers. This is just some of the more Trigger from Only Fools and Horses in there.
God, yeah, that must cost a bit to get in there.
Yeah, I was going to say, people are dying to get in there, aren't they?
People are dying to get in there. Yeah.
But yeah, I should imagine the plot there ain't cheap, is it? It's prime London real estate, isn't it?
But Highgate Cemetery, I don't know, for some reason after World War II that was left to overgrow, and it just got creepier and creepier over the years. So you had this massive, like, creepy, like, horror film set, and you could just roam about it at night, like, undisturbed. There was no security or anything.
A few of the Hammer films were filmed there, weren't they?
Yeah, quite a few. Yeah. Which might possibly, like, be. That might have, like, added to this whole Highgate Vampire craze. Like, if people are walking past late at night and there's sort of flashing lights and sort of people in cloaks.
I think, to be honest, I think they did. I think I read about it before, and they did most of their filming during the day when they filmed there. So.
Oh, that's the point. Yeah, they did that switch, didn't they? Yeah.
Yeah.
But the actual modern Highgate Vampire thing, that started in December 1969 when the witch and psychic investigator David Farron.
Yeah, I was going to say. So you've got. So these are the two main people, aren't they? So were these two? Do these two work together? Were they rivals, or what was the situation between those two?
I think they were sort of uneasy friends at the start, and then I think they split apart for some reason, because David Farron doesn't. No, he's dead now, but he claimed that it wasn't a vampire, although he sort of said it was a vampire, but then he said it wasn't a vampire. But Sean he says that's more of a shadow person thing, like one of these shadow people or spectres or whatever. But Sean Manchester, he says that it's an actual blood-sucking vampire, like mooching about. So I think that's where the split occurred, really.
So it's basically, so it wasn't over whether something happened there; it was over the terminology.
Yeah, they both agreed there's something there, but I think Farron says it's like a spectre, but Manchester says it's like an actual, like, blood-sucking vampire, like Dracula, which is pretty wild, really. But it all started in December 1969 when David Farron saw this grey figure just inside the North Gate that sort of tried to suck his energy. And so he sent a letter to the local newspaper, and then in 1970 asking if anyone else had seen it, and then loads of people wrote in and said, yeah, I've seen it. And then it just sparked off from there, grew from there. But people seem to be seeing either different figures or the same figure that shapeshifts according to each person, because this vampire, whatever, he's either got red glowing eyes or he hasn't, or a top hat or a cloak. And sometimes it's monk-like with like a hood, and other times it's like dressed in a sort of suit with a sort of stovepipe type hat. So could it be different? Could it be different entities, or are we? I think it possibly could be. Yeah, I think it's a different type of thing. Although if it's the same one, it's strange how it's appearing like totally different to different people, but its main thing seems to be staring at you and sort of hypnotising you and trying to draw energy from you. Like, so it's like a psychic rather than the classic. But there's this girl, isn't there? Doesn't the lot of the case centre around a girl or something? There was two schoolgirls who apparently were walking through the cemetery and they saw people rising out of the graves and that, and one of them got. I'm getting a bit ahead of myself here. One of them got bit, didn't they? According to Sean Manchester, he took a photo of the sort of vampire bite, but sort of obviously later on, people have looked at the photo and said like, well, that's just like black felt tip marks, it's not like a vampire.
I don't think that's the one I'm thinking of. Is it someone who lived near the cemetery, next to the cemetery or something? She did like the classic. She went downhill, anemia, that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's the one. Yeah, I forget her name, but
is it Elizabeth? Is it
Elizabeth? That's the one. Yeah, Elizabeth Vodger or something. Yeah, yeah, she's the one with the felt tip.
Oh right, okay.
Yeah. But according to David Farron, anyway, there was also like, because it's not just the vampire. There was apparently a group of professional Satanists, as he called them, who were operating deep within the Highgate.
What, they get paid for it?
Yeah, well, just sort of like the more upper class, sort of serious lot, I suppose. Or they could have been adolescents, really. I mean, we don't really know, but
well, they're all wearing hoods. No one's going to know who they are.
Yeah, it's just like. But they were doing weird stuff. That's what he called them. Yeah, that's quite funny.
Was there an open briefcase on the altar? Is that how they did the professional ones? They had a briefcase with a robe and a dagger in it.
Pentagram on it, yeah.
Monogrammed pentagram.
But that was going on as well at the same time in this secluded empty mausoleum, like right in the centre of it, and they were seemingly doing necromancy or something like that. And at the same time, there's all other sort of weird occult stuff going on in Highgate, in Queenswood, and that's been going on as well. So I just think Highgate's a pretty probably a pretty active area.
Well, the problem is, like we said, it's a good 30 odd acres, and very 37. It's 37 acres of ground, and I should imagine it's very, very hard to police. So
yeah, I don't know what they're doing.
So people are gonna go there, aren't they? Because the chances of getting caught in there are kind of pretty low, aren't they? Especially if you've got a group of spotters or something like that.
I'm tempted to go. I think we should round up a group of men, go down there, sort this fucking vampire out, I reckon.
But I thought Sean Manchester sorted the vampire out.
Apparently, yeah, but apparently he's still being seen, so...
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, we'll get to that, but...
Okay. So let's should we like centre on the Sean Manchester element of it, or do you want to, or Sean Manchester and David Farron?
That's just if we set the scene, like Highgate is just a pretty strange place, because there's all plague pits nearby in Queenswood with loads of bodies buried there. Apparently, even under the children's play area. So
oh, nice.
That's just we've set the scene now, so it's a pretty freaky place. Because Farron he came up with the ley line theory, because I'm really into ley lines. He was saying like the vampire travels along these points that goes through this Highgate Wood and Highgate Cemetery and Hampstead Heath, and that also goes straight through these two pubs, like the Flask and the Gatehouse, and sort of a black figure's been seen in there. So I think there might be something to the ley line theory. There's two ley lines apparently, and they cross in Highgate Cemetery. So that's that'd be something. If someone was going to go search for the vampire, I'd look for the ley lines myself.
Or don't, if you don't want to find it.
Yeah, or just like leave it. Yeah.
Just as a bit of a nice aside, I found on the wiki that, do you remember Dracula AD 72? That apparently that was inspired by the Highgate Vampire.
Yeah, I think definitely. Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, it's a pretty good film. Yeah. I was definitely inspired by David Farron and his because him and his British Psychic and Occult Society, they'd hold vigils in there to try and find the vampire, and they tried to exorcise it, like I was just saying we should do, but during these just weren't very very successful. And during one of them, a female who was there said she was being strangled, and during the next one, the police turned up and arrested him. So it weren't very successful, I believe.
So So who do you think is kind of? Do you think like David Farrant is like the main force behind this, and then like Sean Manchester's a bit of a Johnny Come Lately? Then is he?
No, he was definitely there at the start.
Definitely,
right
he was there.
The
They were both there at the start.
I think they played off each other really, because they had this like 40-year-old feud, didn't they? Kind of. Sort of that gets really tedious, but yeah, they just had this feud, and they're all like slagging each other off online. And
so what do you know about Sean Manchester then? Because I don't. All I know is he's a bishop, but he's not a Catholic bishop, is he?
He's what's known as an autocephalous bishop, which is kind of like more, not really, or he's not ordained by the Vatican, but he's like an independent thing. But I don't take
non-denominational bishop. Well, if you're going to be non-denominational, you might as well be bishop, hadn't you? There's no point going in at the bottom if you're going to be on your own.
Yeah, it's quite an interesting subculture, the autocephalists. They call them the wandering bishops, don't they? And they're just like they all dress up in the robes and that, and all sort of. It's like a parallel to the Catholic Church. Yeah.
So is it actually a church he belongs to then? It's not just like some internet thing.
I think it's called the Ordo Sancti Graal. It's all to do with the Holy Grail and that. He wrote a book on it and that, and I haven't read it, but I like them both. You know, I don't take sides. I think they're both like great characters. It's just
it's always better when there's a feud as well, because it just like keeps the thing going, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, it definitely does that. Yeah.
So was Sean Manchester a bishop at the time, or was he just like, was this before he became a bishop?
I think he was more of a psychic investigator back then, but I'm trying to find my notes. God. Autocephalous Catholic bishop, yeah. But interestingly, he is said to have operated in right-wing circles as a younger man. as a sort of, he claims that he was doing it as a sort of undercover agent to gather intelligence. But about 30 years later, the photographs emerged of him in his kind of Nazi shrine room in his church, in his supposed church, which is a bit yeah. So his mate Kevin took photos of it, and yeah, well, that's kind of curious. But...
So that's Sean Manchester. What are David Farrant's origins then? Do you know anything about him?
David Farrant, he was just like a. He says he was always interested in paranormal, and him and his mates used to go searching for ghosts and that. And he later became a witch, like an initiated witch, and yeah. So you got like the witch on one side and the Christian bishop on the other side. So that's what fascinates me. This interplay.
They should have been able to sort it, going at it from two ends, then, shouldn't they?
Yeah, it's a pity they didn't just. It's a pity they didn't just get along. Really, they could have done some amazing like conferences or something like that. But...
Yeah, I think. Do you think maybe they come along? They were like 30 years ahead of their time, or something. 30, 40 years ahead of their time. Do you think that's what it was?
I think that's a bit. Yeah, it's a bit sort of. It's probably too much for people, isn't it? It's like they like the paranormal, but they want it at arm's length, don't they? But
yeah,
when there's there's people staking vampires in cemeteries, it's a bit sort of like. Because he was banged up, weren't he, David Farrant? Yeah, he was like.
Was it David Farrant that was banged up? Because somebody died as a result of something he did, or was it?
No, I think someone did die in the cemetery. Someone died with all stab wounds and that. But I don't know whether people say that was the vampire, but who knows? But I think some mental patient sort of travelled for miles to go to the Highgate Cemetery, and he was found dead, with all stab marks in his back and to his neck and that.
Oh, blimey.
Yeah. But because as this was all going on, there was all like vandalism going on in the cemetery as well. People chopping heads off corpses and staking them and that. So, the police were looking for a scapegoat.
I I don't think the letter to the local newspaper really helped, did it? Just poured petrol on it, didn't it?
No, they both did court publicity. Yeah.
So when because there's something from 1975 you can find. Is it an interview from 1975 you can find on YouTube with him or something?
There's loads of stuff with him on the BBC and that, like walking about and with a stake and that. Yeah. I suppose that's understandable. I'd like to be that way myself. I'd like to sort of be a bit more media. I'd like to get paid to sort of stake vampires or something, you know.
Well, it's because it's like he was still dining out on it from because that Central Weekend is like mid to late 80s, isn't it?
Yeah, that's gonna turn around and bite you on the arse, I suppose, isn't it? Like it does with them.
Yeah.
I suppose that's all right in the 70s, isn't it? Because that was all funky, and that was. But once it gets to like the ironical sort of 90s and 2000s, yeah, they do look a bit clownish, really.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if do you still get vampire hunters about? I suppose you do. It's vampires have gone out of fashion now, though, aren't they? I mean, it's all about the Bigfoot and the ghosts now, isn't it?
They were massive in the 90s, weren't they? The old vampires, yeah, all those books and stuff.
What, Anne Rice? You got Anne Rice.
Anne Rice, Twilight. Just the real vampire. They twisted it into the real vampires, weren't they? Whoever it was behind it, they were trying to sort of invent this sort of real vampire subculture.
Well, if there ever was kind of a real vampire, I mean, even like Nosferatu was quite cosmetic compared to what it looked, because it was supposed to be like a stinky, horrible thing, isn't it? An actual. If we were to talk about an actual real life vampire, they're supposed to be like vile, aren't they?
Yeah, as Anne Rice turned it around, didn't she? Made them all sort of sophisticated
and sexy. Brad Pitt vampires.
It's a good film. It's a good film by Abel Ferrara, who did Driller Killer. He did a good sort of real vampire film. It's quite realistic.
What's that one called? Can you remember?
I can't remember what it's called. I'm not sure if you looked in his filmography that'd come up. I think it's in 1995. That's a very good depiction of like what a real vampire cult would be like.
I think Near Dark
all
was
gritty in New York.
Do you remember Near Dark? That weren't a bad film.
Near Dark, yeah, that was good, yeah. But anyway, Farrant got like nearly 5 years for interfering with graves and all this sort of business.
So did he actually? Do you think he actually did it, or do you think they just like pinned the general stuff on him just to make us like?
I think he was definitely fitted up. I don't think he's the sort of person who'd have like interfered with corpses and that. No, I think he was genuinely trying to find out what the Highgate Vampire was all about. But interestingly, at his 1970 trial, the judge was called Christopher Lee, as in the actor who played Dracula in the Hammer horror. That's a bit funny, but.
I've had a look. I can't see anything that looks like it's obviously a vampire film. Was it mid-90s, is it?
Yeah, Abel Ferrara, yeah. I think it's called Night something Night or something.
The Blackout, the Funeral.
Nah.
Drilica, Fear City, but that was mid-80s.
No, I think that was him who made it, yeah, pretty sure. These names crop up. I'm always interested in names like these crop up in connection with this Highgate Vampire thing. And there was this teacher and a city filmmaker called Alan Blood. of all names, he was called Alan Blood. And he sort of tried to get in on it. He was saying, it's all me, you know, all this vampire stuff. You were seeing us filming our vampire film. He appeared on the media a couple of times. And once you get all these names appearing, that turns more sort of interesting, like a cast of archetypes or something, almost like some sort of tarot deck or something. It gets very folkloric, doesn't it? Where all these sort of Alan Blood and Christopher Lee, and I don't know what's going on.
What about did you see about the exorcism when Manchester declared he'd hold an exorcism on Friday the 13th of March 1970? So how long did this actually go on for then?
That's been going on since 1969. Pretty much. That was very popular in the 70s, but it's still carrying on today. But because David Farrant's trial in 1974, that was at the Old Bailey. You know, that's pretty serious. But
Jesus.
that was like the first sort of witch trial since that medium Helen Duncan's in 1944.
Did you know this one about the? They said they'd have a magician's duel, Farrant and Manchester.
Yeah. With sabres, yeah. Fight to the death with sabres in Highgate.
Is that what they said they were going to do?
That's what they did, yeah. Well, I don't know if they did it. I think they did. Apparently, Manchester was slain by David Farrant. You know, and he sort of laid low for a bit, and then sort of. Well, he wasn't dead. It turns out he wasn't dead after all. I don't know what they were doing back then. That's pretty crazy stuff.
There must have been some good stuff going around, wasn't there, for them two to be like that?
Yeah, I don't know. But
yeah, it says on the Wikipedia that the ghosts were described as a man in a tall hat, a spectral cyclist, a woman in white, a face glaring through the bars of the gate, a figure wading into a pond, and a pale gliding form, bells ringing and voices calling. So you said about the disembodied voices as well, didn't you?
Yeah, there's a really strange one where this guy was walking past the North Gate and he saw this black clad figure in the distance, but then he suddenly heard, "Good evening, sir." Ooh. like in his ear, like as if this figure in the distance was doing some sort of ventriloquism or something. Like, God, I wouldn't fancy that. But that was that was a crazy time in the 70s, especially. Like, there was corpses being dragged out and beheaded and staked, and it was like a headless skeleton.
Because they said a bit about people swarming the gates. People swarming the gates to try and sort the vampire out, weren't they?
That was the Great Vampire Hunt, yeah, on Friday the 13th.
The Great Vampire Hunt? Was this like a massive event then, was it?
That was the biggest vampire hunt in English history. Like, that was, yeah. And the police had to be called, and with dogs and everything, you know. That's crazy stuff. But that could have that could have led to, like, the weird situation where the police could have arrested the vampire, maybe. If he's like if he was a real, like, physical Manchester cop, they could have arrested him, led him away in cuffs, you know. That'd have been pretty.
Well, the iron. So what do you think? So you got all the vampire lore. Well, I mean, what's bunkum and what's kind of real? Do you think? Yeah, you've obviously got all the, like, movie lore. I mean, what do you think? How do you think? Do you think it's like sure Manchester did, where you have to exercise it, or do you think it's finding the corpse and staking it?
Well, it's like, do they actually, like Dracula? Are they actually physical beings that walk around and have to drink blood to survive? It's a bit far fetched, but I'm not so sure. I mean, there's all these, like, sheep mutilations, things like that. I mean, that doesn't seem to be done by I'm actually inclined to think that it's not done by sort of animals and that. All these strange, maybe something like a vampire's feed mutilation.
What, like you see in the films, the ethical vampires that don't feed on people, that kind of thing.
Maybe they're like Bigfoot, like, because Bigfoot seems to be, he's like physical, isn't he, sometimes, and then he disappears into nothingness. So maybe that's what vampires are. They can flip between the dimensions. Maybe seems a bit of a chore, doesn't it, having to go around and feed off women?
Yeah, I think the probably energy vampire probably makes more sense. The psychic vampire.
There's been cases of mobile phone batteries and, like, camera batteries, like, completely draining, like, quickly at Highgate. Yeah, so something's draining the energy. Yeah.
Well, do you think the 5G will kill off our ghosts then? Is that what you think? Do you think that could happen?
I'll kill us off. I'll kill everything off with us. Yeah, that might stop the vampires. That might be good. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe that should be their advertising. See, no vampires.
I just want to get in this thing when in all this Highgate vampire vandalism, like, one of them, someone took a headless skeleton and propped it up in the driving seat of a car with its hands on the wheels.
Jesus,
and that's what they tried to pin on David Farrant.
So that's the one they tried to pin on him then, because didn't Shaw Manchester say that he'd found the grave of the vampire, didn't he?
apparently he found the mausoleum in Highgate Cemetery where the vampire was resting. So he went in there with his colleagues and sort of exorcised it, and then bricked up the entrance with garlic impregnated cement.
Garlic impregnated cement.
To stop it, but it escaped. That escaped after that somehow. So I suppose it actually travelled through the...
Obviously it was an Italian, wasn't it? It weren't bothered about the garlic.
But as people have said, there's like this funny sort of scene of the vampire sort of dragging its coffin along the street, trying to find somewhere else to kip, sort of thing. which apparently it did. So that Manchester and his friends had to sort of hunt it again, and that's when
that's when they said they found it in a disused house, didn't they?
Disused sort of mansion, yeah. And so he chopped its head off with a gravedigger's shovel and staked it and burnt the remains, which is a bit. I don't know how, if you burnt a vampire in the back garden, I'm sure that someone would have seen it. I don't know. But that's what he claims. Yeah.
Someone's getting a whiff of some gone off barbecue. Barbecue doesn't smell right. What's going on there?
Yeah, that was 1970 when he first found it in Highgate Cemetery. There's a thing of him on. There's like a reconstruction of the exorcism he did. You can find it on YouTube.
So he's kind of a believer that they are like the classic vampire, where they bed down somewhere particular for the night, but they're not tied to one place.
He says that the Highgate vampire is the king vampire of the undead. That's what he thinks. It's like a king vampire, like any other vampire. It was like a real big wig. Yeah.
So if it was a king vampire, why wasn't it creating any other vampires?
Well, he did, didn't it? That bit. Sean Manchester's friend, Louisa, another one.
Another one got bit, did she?
She was bit, and she died apparently. And he went to, I think that was in a different cemetery, not Highgate, but he went to try and help her by doing this white magic ritual. No, the Great Northern London Cemetery. That was where this Louisa, the victim, was buried. And at the time, all foxes were being found, drained of blood and that. But they were being found in Highgate Street, so maybe she was going along the ley line or something, attacking things. But Sean Manchester did this sort of white magic ritual to help her, and she appeared after loads of sort of like Hammer horror dramatics. But as he was like talking to her, he claims that she metamorphosized into a giant spider. So he staked her, and that was the end of Louisa. She was laid to rest. Which, I mean, this is what he claims. So,
Is it like because didn't you say, I think this was before we started, you said he was kind of following the Dracula story. So if that was the king vampire, then she was like Mina Harker, wasn't she?
Yeah, it's very similar, isn't it? It's similar to that. The Devil Rides Out film, isn't it? Because a giant spider attacks the good guys in that, didn't it?
Oh, did he say about a giant spider then, did he?
Well, that Louisa, the spirit of Louisa, or the vampire, physical vampire of Louisa, changed into a giant spider, yeah. Tried to attack him, so he staked her, yeah. But having said that, I don't know, because I've read accounts of sort of giant spider type entities, so... Like I say, is it happening on the physical plane, or are people so worked up that sort of it's happening on some sort of odd, interconnected dimension?
Well, you know what they say about a fear of spiders, don't you? Maybe old Sean Manchester's just a bit sexually repressed. Maybe that's fear of women. Fear of sex, isn't it? Fear of spiders.
It's funny you should say that, because in that, what's his name? Malachi Martin. His Hostage to the Devil book about sort of demonic attacks and things and that. He gives this account of this female who apparently had sex with this like spider entity, so this spider demon. Well, that's what she claimed.
Ooh, blimey, how does that work?
Yeah. I'm not sure. I won't fancy it myself.
Jesus.
But I mean, Malachi Martin, I don't know what to make of him. That Hostage to the Devil book seems very straight up. It's not really sensational. He just sort of tells it as it is, kind of.
So is that is that fiction then? Is it?
No, it's like a real life occurrence. Yeah, it's about 7 real life occurrences. Yeah, fascinating book. Yeah.
Well, have you ever heard that thing about what's his name? Grant Morrison, the comic writer. Have you read about the stuff where he's dabbled in a bit of magic?
Yeah.
That one where he saw the big insect entity, didn't he?
Oh, I hadn't heard about that.
Yeah, he was in a hotel room, did like loads and loads of drugs, loads and loads of magic, and this like insect entity appeared to him. I can't remember, I don't think it was spider-like, but he was definitely insect-like. It's worth listening to. It's a really good anecdote.
Because Alan Moore, that other, he's like his rival, isn't he? Grant Morrison.
Yeah, they're like the Farrington and Manchester of comics, aren't they?
Yeah, you got to have a good old feud on the go. But Alan Moore claims that, I forget which title it was, but one of the characters he invented, he claims that Alan Moore claims he was in this pub or somewhere, and the character that he created in this fictional comic book sort of walked in to this pub, and he looked exactly like the character he had invented.
Oh, blimey.
He says he sort of gave him this really sort of knowing smile, and then sort of walked out. So, like, bloody hell.
Yeah.
Can you create people just by writing about them? Yeah, that's fascinating idea. Because because like I say, it carries on. Like the heyday was in the 1970s, but
yeah, I did see on the Wikipedia page they said there's between 1991 and 2016 numerous sightings of the vampire, and apparently at least one film has been claimed. Yeah,
there was a real crappy film called The Highgate Vampire.
Oh, is that an actual film?
Teenage.
I think they actually mean film of the vampire.
Oh, right. Oh, I'd love to see that.
Yeah, we'll have to see if we can find that one out.
Because in 1994, there was apparently strange things going on at Highgate Cemetery with Freddy Krueger dolls, from Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah.
Apparently, lots of Freddy Krueger dolls were found on graves. That was in 1994. So, like, it still goes on. Because a house was also like that was partly on the Highgate Cemetery grounds. So people say, like, people often say, don't they, when you disturb the ground or start doing loads of earthworks, that sort of triggers psychic stuff. So that seems
even like heavy decorating can in a house, can't it? If you've got that kind of house, it can.
That'd be interesting to talk to builders about all the weird things they've seen. I bet they've seen a few things. You're sort of putting up a conservatory. The next thing, I got to cover it up.
Got some old grandma tapping you on the back.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, things have been seen. 2004, 2005. People have seen it.
So is it the old school face through the gates type thing then that people are seeing?
Yeah, the 2005 was where that bloke heard that "Good evening, sir" in his ear. That was right outside the North Gate. Yeah.
Oh.
If anyone wants to find the vampire, go to the gate.
The North
Gate
opens
onto Swains Lane. Opens onto Swains Lane. Yeah.
So where's it? So has the location of the mansion ever been? Has anyone ever figured out where it is, or what?
Oh yeah, that burnt down. I think it burnt. I think that was the one that burnt down. Yeah, and a dead body was found inside it, but I don't think it was a vampire. But it might have been a tramp or something.
Ooh.
Yeah, I think that was the one that burnt down. Yeah, because in 2012, these people from somewhere called the North London Paranormal Investigations. They said they went to the North Gates and actually communed with the Highgate Vampire or this psychic called Gemma who was with them. They said she was conversing with this 7-foot tall sort of bloke dressed like an undertaker, and apparently he told this medium that he wasn't the vampire, but he'd murdered 4 people for like vivisectionism. So. All sorts of weird stuff's going on in there.
I should imagine there is.
Because, I mean, there's dodgy stuff was always been going on there. There's that guy called John Russell Pope. He was a friend of Farrant's. He used to be the head of the United Temples of Satan.
But it's funny how you've got a pope is the head of the Temple of
Satan.
Satan.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, like you say with the names.
All these weird names keep cropping up. Yeah, it's odd. But he was also involved with Manchester in this like Nazi hoax publicity stunt thing. I don't know what they were trying to do, but yeah. But he was arrested. Like that John Pope was arrested and allegedly assaulted by police when he was in custody. So David Farrant sent 2 voodoo dolls in coffins to the detectives working on the case, like warning them to leave like Mr. Pope alone. But of course he got arrested for that and like banged up for that.
For scaring the police.
I mean, sending voodoo dolls to the police, that's a bit
yeah, that weren't a great move in hindsight,
trouble,
was it?
It's asking for trouble. Well, I don't know what can he get done for like sending voodoo dolls? I suppose you can get done for threatening behaviour.
Yeah, because it's intent, isn't it? It's threatening intent, isn't it? Especially if it's in a coffin. If it wasn't in a coffin, you could probably argue your case. But in a coffin is sending a very specific message, isn't it?
Because he was done for like he had a handgun as well with like ammunition. It's really strange. The charge sheet says like sending voodoo dolls to police, the theft of hospital bed sheets, and the possession of a handgun and ammunition.
Theft of hospital bed sheets.
Yeah,
what was that for? Was that for some sort of magic ritual or something, or was it just?
I think he was just found with these like dubious bed sheets. Yeah, because he had a massive like altar, didn't he, in his flat with this sort of devil face above it, and I suppose that didn't help when the police searched his house. But
so was he kind of a black magician? You said he did some white magic ceremonies, but he sounds more of a black magician if he's dabbling in voodoo and devil faces and things like that.
He had this Order of the Black Moon, it was called, but he says he's not a black magician, but other people say he is part of this rumour mill thing. That John Pope's a strange guy. He does Jack the Ripper tours now around London. He says he's descended from Robin Hood, and he's like the occult master and that. Yeah.
Right. Did you say? Because I think we're going to have to wrap up to get to Brutus's show. But you said you've got some more next week on the Highgate Vampire.
Oh yeah. Oh, we'll definitely get to the Cult of Death. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we'll talk about the Kirk Lees vampire. Is there much to say about the Kirk Lees vampire? Speaking of Robin Hood.
Yeah, that's all tied into it. Yeah, definitely. I got about 100 pages of notes I got to go through.
Oh, so is this going to be a multi-part series then?
It could be, yeah. But... No, but this is the real thing, isn't it, about the Highgate Vampire. The Highgate Vampire is great, but there's a lot more to it, which we'll get into. Yeah.
So there's a lot more. So there's a lot more to it, as in round the edges, or there's a lot more to it, as in the actual meat and potatoes of it.
The weird cults behind it all. Yeah, definitely.
So, right.
God, that hour's gone quick, bloody hell.
Well, I think we've only done about 50 minutes. We could probably do about another 5 if there's anything else you want to talk about.
I don't know, really. I just think everything's bloody weird, you know. Like, I've always hated normality, and I used to think I was a freak because I hated normality. But the more I sort of look at everything's weird, isn't it? Don't you think? Like, even like printers and sort of electric lights, everything's just seems very weird to me. Or maybe I'm mad. Even
well, you certainly got a unique way of looking at the world, here. I'll give you that.
It just seems like everything's. I find if you stare at it, like the most normal thing, like say a kettle. If you stare at it, you sort of. I don't know. I can't explain it, but there's more to a kettle than a kettle, isn't there? Sort of thing. Or there's more to everything than the surface of the thing, isn't it?
Yeah, well, because you got the kettle, you plug it into the wall, the electricity has to be generated, the coal that fires the power station to make the electricity. Yeah,
It just goes to infinity, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And people are strange as well. People are definitely strange.
Oh, people are definitely strange, Zero. You've got that one bang on.
Well, just like I've noticed, like, you know, if someone comes to visit and they stay a while and then they leave, but they're, in a strange way, they're also sort of stay for a bit. It's almost like you can still, they're still sort of there. Their aura, or I hate using that word aura, but they're sort of still there, aren't they, for a bit? And then
Yeah, I mean, do you think we must operate on more than one level, though, mustn't we?
oh, for sure, yeah. I think we're surrounded by all sorts of weird things. There's that old Kabbalist thing that says that if we could really see what's all around us, we'll drop down dead in fright. You know, if we could really see all these weird things that are around us all the time. Yeah.
Well, you've also got you're familiar with Rosemary Ellen Guiley?
I've read a few of hers.
Yeah, she seems to pin everything on the jinn at the moment, doesn't she? You know, like the was it the Arabic genie, isn't it? Because they live on. She says that they live on just a slightly different frequency to us, so they're almost here but not quite.
I wouldn't buy if I went. I'm never going to go to the Middle East, but if I went to the Middle East, I'd buy any like holiday maker tat to bring home. There's probably a gin in it or something. No, I wouldn't. God, have we got time to talk about the haunted gong?
Go on, let's quick.
I could talk about the haunted gong, like things like, oh no, we're getting to. I've got 20 to 9. Maybe save it till next week.
Yeah, we'll do it next week. So what we're doing now is we are finishing up, guys. We are heading over to Brutus's channel. Brutus is talking about Adam Weishaupt of the Illuminati. Don't forget, you can find me on Dope Movies and Shows. There'll be an audio version of this podcast available, and we will see you guys next